Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. This is a regular session of Athens City Council. Our first task here is to establish a quorum. And all members are present except for one, which we are expecting to arrive later. We will dispose of the minutes. The regular session held August 1 and August 15, 2022. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Communications. Does any member of council have a communication they'd like to share? Member Crow.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Just an announcement that the Environment and Sustainability Commission will meet this Wednesday on the first floor of this building at 6 p.m. And following that, at 7 p.m. will be the Fall Sustainability Film Series first film of the fall semester, and it's called The Revolution Generation, and I highly recommend it. So you can come to the Environment and Sustainability Commission and then work your way down Court Street to the Athena for the 7 p.m. showing. Thank you, Member Reisner.
Thank you, Member Crow. Any other members? Are there any reports and communications from other elected officials?
No.
I think of the law director. Madam Mayor, temporary.
Thank you. Temporary, yes. And I did want to share a communication that the mayor is attending a Wednesday meeting at the White House with President Biden and his administrative staff, and this is discussing the effects of legislation, the American Rescue Plan, and the bipartisan infrastructure law bill that has been passed. And he'll be there with mayors from Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Dayton, Akron, Toledo, Youngstown, Lorain, Elyria, Lima, and Lakewood, as well as Debbie Phillips, who is our former state representative from Southeast Ohio. So it should be a good, it's part of meetings that will be held with different states in the nation. So we're excited to hear about that. It's live streamed tomorrow at noon, by the way, if folks are interested in it.
Thank you. Director Stone, anything? And I see the auditor is not here, so move on. Come to ordinances for a third reading. Since our absent member of council has arrived, we won't have to make any changes to the agenda. So 8522, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 29, Housing Regulations, Chapter 29.36, prohibited actions to add Section 29.36.02, tenants' rights to pay to stay, introduced by Council Member Ziff.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. It really does roll off the tongue.
Certainly does.
I would like to move to table this this ordinance, and the reason behind that is we've been made aware that the Ohio legislature has unfortunately passed legislation that will be preempting, starting on the 23rd of September, our ability to, or any municipality, our ability to have a pay-to-stay ordinance. Member Swank, I can see your look of slight shock and dismay, and I apologize, I wasn't able to tell you beforehand. I myself did not know until about 25 minutes ago. So if we were even to pass this ordinance tonight, it would not go into effect until the first week of October, and by then it would already be null and void, unfortunately. So we would just have to repeal it. So for now, I'm just moving that we table it in the meantime, with the hopes that maybe a municipality who's already passed them will challenge it in the future and we can bring it back up.
Do we have a second to this motion?
Seconded.
It's been seconded. According to our rules, this is subject to debate among members of council. So if anyone cares to speak to this, feel free. Member Swank.
Oh, boy.
Welcome back.
Yeah. I got on a plane in Amsterdam 17 hours ago, so you'll have to excuse me if this surprise appears to be a bit jumbled. I'd like to see us go ahead with this and pass it and get it on the books for several reasons. Drawing on parallels with the recent Roe versus Wade decision, many political entities in the United States passed legislation in anticipation of the Supreme Court's decision to null, that's not the word, but do away with Roe versus Wade. If we can get this on the books, and even if the state legislature passes this, and another municipality challenges it and wins, then we're already there. We don't have to start over. And that's why I'll vote no to table when we get to that point.
Member Crowell?
Thank you, Member Eisner. Can we hear from the law director on this issue? I know we received some information about the resolution of a hearing in Cincinnati that seemed to lean in our direction. And I received late this afternoon the communication from a local attorney about this issue, but I would like to hear, if possible, from Director Eliason.
Well, I just became aware of it about 20 minutes ago, and I didn't see the 5:30 email that we all received from Rusty Rittenhouse. This hasn't been something that's been on my listserv. I have a listserv with other municipal attorneys, and nor has the Ohio Municipal League discussed this in any of the newsletters. So this was really news to me. I mean, I'm well aware of the Cincinnati case, and our ordinance certainly was very similar to Cincinnati, including the $125 cap on attorney fees. So I'm surprised. I wasn't aware of it. And again, I probably would need more time to actually take a closer look at what the Ohio Revised Code is going to say. I mean, I have the language that's to go into effect, and it definitely states that we're not permitted to enact, enforce, continue existence any ordinance or other measure that is in conflict with the chapter that regulates the rights and obligations of parties to a rental agreement that are regulated by this chapter. So that's what the new provision is going to state. If you don't table it, I think the point that Rusty Rittenhouse was trying to make is that a lot of or people would rely on our ordinance, and maybe to their detriment if it's subsequently found to be in violation of the state code. That was the point he made.
May I continue? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I would appreciate a legal opinion from the law director on this issue. I know Mr. Rittenhouse, and he's a fine lawyer. And I also read his email. Again, I didn't have time to really absorb it. I didn't have time to dig into the revised code and see what exactly he was saying. I didn't have time to do any of that, nor am I a legal expert, so it wouldn't be worth much anyway. But if we are basing our decision tonight based on this last sort of minute information without an opinion from our law director, I'm a little worried about that course of action. Thank you.
Well, if you don't table it and it does go into effect, I mean, it won't go into effect for 30 days, and that would give us a chance to repeal it. So there are different options. We could table it, I could issue the legal opinion, and you could bring it back off the table at third reading and pass it, or pass it and it doesn't go into effect for 30 days, and then it could be repealed. So.
Oh, Member Michael.
Yes, thank you. I was wanting to follow up on the possibility of community member confusion if we do introduce this now and then receive contradictory kind of guidance at the state level. I don't know if that's clarification that the law director can provide in terms of the potential for that confusion, or if someone else has thoughts on that.
Well, if it's passed tonight, it doesn't have an emergency clause, and it won't go into effect for 30 days. So that makes it in effect in early October, which gives me a chance to issue a legal opinion and get it back before council to repeal it. Or it could be very easily tabled and in 2 weeks brought back off the table and passed.
Just for my own mind, just to clarify, am I to understand that this House bill has already passed and been signed by the governor?
That's the indication. Again, I just heard about this a few minutes ago. I didn't check my email. It came at 5:30. I didn't have a call from Mr. Rittenhouse, so I'm just hearing about it. And I would like the opportunity to actually research it, and I'd be glad to issue a legal opinion once I actually see what the new law states.
Do we know what the House bill number is?
430.
Okay.
Let me just read a section of what Mr. Rittenhouse sent. A new version of Ohio Revised Code 5321.20 was also enacted. Both sections will be effective in just a few weeks on September 23rd, 2022, which would indicate to me that it's already law.
Well, it's not effective until that date.
Right.
It's much like our ordinances, so. I would actually like to hear, I think, is that Lucy Schwally from Ohio, Southeast Ohio Legal Services? I'd like to hear if, maybe what she has to say, if she's aware of this.
Sure. So I previously
Could you
had
tell us who you are and who you represent?
Absolutely. Lucy Schwally, I'm the managing attorney of Southeastern Ohio Legal Services, Athens office. I previously had a written invitation from Councilmember Smelnez. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm not sure if that's still in effect, so I'd like to ask that because our funding restrictions prohibit me from making testimony here without a written invitation.
This was, yeah, this was a few weeks ago, some few weeks ago, and I don't know, Law Director Eliason is.
You invited her to come, and I believe you sent an email, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I was here a few weeks ago on invitation to, talk about how this could impact our clients at Southeastern Ohio Legal Services. I, have been in touch with my colleague at the Ohio Poverty Law Center, who absolutely can come and speak to you, but his understanding is that the rent control ordinance passed by the state legislature would not preempt pay to stay. So again, his understanding is that that prohibits the rent control ordinances that have been passed by various local legislatures, but it does not specifically, talk about pay to stay. So because Mr. Rittenhouse did not come here to this meeting to present, apparently he emailed you all, but that's not public information, so I can't specifically address that. But my understanding is from Mr. Eccles, who is an attorney at Ohio Poverty Law Center, is his understanding is that that bill preempts rent control, and because the pay to stay isn't necessarily changing the state the code, it wouldn't impact. Like Law Director Eliason, I haven't researched this specifically and would need more time, but that's what he's telling me. He works on this stuff every day. So I think we're all taken a little aback by this, right? I mean, this has been in place for a while too. So it's not like this was a new state law that passed. I mean, it's newish, but not today, I don't think.
So revised code 5321-19A, apparently the new language is going to talk about parties to rental agreements that are regulated by this chapter. But then under 5321.20, it does specifically talk about rent contract. and rent stabilization, but they use different language.
Right.
But I think it's probably the same, the rental agreement.
Rent stabilization is rent control, right? So that is, my understanding is this the legislation was enacted to prevent the local legislatures from enacting rent stabilization or rent control. Again, I would have to do some research, but it doesn't seem to me that the ordinance that the council is considering is necessarily preempted by that statute. Again, I don't have Mr. Rittenhouse's email. It's not public. He's not here. So I guess he just emails you all. I don't know how that works.
You can have a copy because it's now public record.
Okay.
Member Swank.
This was passed on June the 1st. And I read, and I'm no attorney, and I read it the same way that, and look, it's a 33-page document that deals primarily with the Ohio Revised Code to address underground utility facilities affected by construction, to exempt mobile computing units from certain building regulation, to make changes relating to the landlord and tenant law. This is like going to Kroger's and throwing everything in a shopping cart and checking out as one family. But I still think I'd like to bring this to a vote today and get it on the books and see how it plays out, because as the law director has indicated, even if we pass it this evening, it would not go in effect to 30 days, which gives us plenty of time to communicate one way or another to the general public, which may alleviate the concerns about confusion in the public's mind.
Okay. Yes.
And I can also just say that my office represents, individuals who are at risk of evictions, and we hold a clinic here in court. So, Southeastern Ohio Legal Services can also do our part to communicate to, populations that might be impacted by this about any uncertainties.
Okay, we have a motion to table. It's been seconded. We've debated it. I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. The nays have it. The item has not been tabled. Would you care to introduce an ordinance or a motion to adopt?
I would love to motion to adopt
8522.
this.
We've had a motion to, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Swank, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I think we've talked about it enough. We're going to vote on this.
I think there's some comment
Oh,
from the audience.
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Lucy's comment. I'm sorry, Damon Crane, United Athens County Tenants. Zach Eccles, who Lucy mentioned, is with the Ohio Poverty Law Center, but also with the Ohio, Tenant Protection Roundtable, I believe, that United Athens County Tenants participates in. We had a monthly meeting just this last, a week ago on Monday. And, this is made up of tenant attorneys from around the state, policy advocacy groups, direct assistance organizations, and everybody's kept a real close watch on legislation at the state level. When the rent control issue came up back in June, I remember Zach telling us about that the very next day at UACT, and we were all very dismayed that the state was trying to preempt home rule on that issue. But this is definitely the first, not only we at UACT and Zach at the Ohio Poverty Law Center have heard about this, but apparently anybody who does this work in the state has heard about it. One of the things we talked about at that meeting last week was specifically local efforts to get pay-to-stay ordinances passed. We discussed the effort here in Athens. So, anything's possible. Rusty could be right. I did have the opportunity to see at least one of his past emails to council. I'm not an attorney, but everything that I know from our research about the law didn't make me feel that his arguments were very well supported or persuasive. So I personally would be skeptical, but again, anything's possible. I just did want to say that if he is right, that sure would be a surprise to everybody I'm aware of who follows these issues around the state. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a vote? All those in favor of adopting 8522 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. It's passed. So, ordinance 9822, an ordinance amending the 2022 appropriation ordinance introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, Member Eisner. As discussed at committee and in the first two readings, there are a number of items on this appropriation ordinance that deal with increased prices for fuel, as well as other increased supplies that the city has to budget for. There's also some costs for COVID sewage testing, which gives us the most advanced sort of warning of where we are in terms of our level in the city of Athens. There is an appropriation to the recreation fund due to both swimming pool and soccer expenses, as well as inflationary changes. And we also had a donation, a grant received that's part of this ordinance, as well as a donation by Fiona Avocado to support programs at Arts West. And then we also have additional appropriation for the survey of the soccer area down at the, or the new soccer leased space. And then also another grant from the state to the community center for childcare stabilization. I'd like to make a motion to approve 9822.
Second?
Any discussion? This is really interesting stuff from the audience. Administration, nothing to say about it? Okay, then, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting 9822 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Okay, it's passed. 9922, an ordinance authorizing retroactive pay for the pool manager, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, Member Eisner. I'll go ahead and I'd like to make a motion to approve 9922.
Second?
Thank you, Member Ziff. I'll just go ahead and read this. We discussed this at committee and at first two readings that we had intended to increase the pay for the pool manager from the start of her work, and we didn't exactly do that correctly in our ordinance, and so this is to rectify that mistake. Whereas Ordinance 7822 authorized increasing the hourly rate from $13 to $3 above to $16 to $4 above, and where the pool manager was hired on April 21st at the hourly rate of $16, Section 1, Athens City Council does hereby authorize a retroactive payment for the pool manager from April 21, 2022, the higher date, to July 6th, 2022, which was the effective date of the ordinance. And that change is from $16 to $18 per hour. Thank you, Member Reisner.
Thank you, Member Crowell. Need a discussion about this? Administration, anything to say about it? Audience, okay. Well, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting 9922, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. It's been approved. Ordinance 100-22, an ordinance amending the 2022 staffing levels and compensation authorized by Ordinance 141-21 to add a part-time receptionist in the mayor's office, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Member Reisner. I'd like to make a motion to approve 122.
Second?
Thank you. This Title really says it all. We are looking to add this part-time receptionist. This is in the pay grade 1. The pay grade bands are attached to the ordinance. And that's all I got. Thanks, Member Eisner.
Hey, Member Crowe, any discussion? Council? Administration? Care to speak to it? Okay. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting ordinance 100-22 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. 101-22, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to accept bids where necessary and enter into contracts for design and construction of City Hall renovations, project number 356, Phase 1, conference rooms, introduced by Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, Member Eisner. I'd like to make a motion to approve 101-22.
Second.
Thank you. As discussed, there's a number of phases for a project to renovate City Hall. And the first phase here are to renovate our conference rooms, both the existing front conference room and then a new conference room, which will be on the first level, which is easier, obviously, for citizens and accessibility reasons. I'm going to go ahead and read Section 2. The 2022 Appropriation Ordinance 150-21 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $75,000 for design and construction of Project 356, Phase 1, conference rooms. Thank you, Member Eisner.
Thank you, Member Crowe. Discussion. Administration?
Just as a reminder, this project will have multiple phases, with our target being complete by 2024, the 150th anniversary of this building. And so right now, we're just working on Phase 1, and that $75,000 is the conference room plus design for other phases. So it's not almost $75,000 just for those conference rooms.
Just for my own curiosity, when remodeling the conference rooms, how long do you think that'll take? See, like 6 months?
We do have, as we didn't need to bid this, it was under $50,000. We have a contractor in place now,
Uh-huh.
and is ready to go as soon as the money is in place to do it. Function of being able to order things, but we're hopeful that by the end of this calendar year we can have that work done.
Thank you. Well, we've had a second for it, and so I'd like to call for the vote. All those in favor of adopting ordinance 101-22 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. It's passed. Ordinance for second reading. With ordinances for second reading, we usually just read the titles. Usually no real discussion, but who knows, maybe there will be. Ordinance 102-22, an ordinance enacting Athens City Code Title 51, Economic Development, Section 51.01. Athens Community Improvement Corporation, ACIC, authorizing execution of necessary documents and agreements to create and implement the ACIC, and approving the plan and authorizing agreement and code of regulations with ACIC, introduced by Councilmember Grace. Nothing? Okay. Ordinance 103-22. An ordinance accepting a 25-year sanitary sewer easement from Ohio University located at the Clippinger Center, introduced by Councilmember Grace. Ordinance 104-22, an ordinance amending the 2022 appropriation ordinance and ordinance 72-20, authorizing design, engineering of the city sewer system improvement project number 330, introduced by Councilmember McCary. Ordinance 107-22, an ordinance amending the 22 appropriation ordinance, introduced by Councilmember Crowe. That's all of our second readings. Ordinances for first reading. An ordinance amending Athens City Code Title V, Public Utilities, Chapters 5.02, Garbage and Rubbish, and 5.05, Recycling and Anti-Scavenging Regulations, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
Member Crowell,
What?
did we miss two?
You missed one.
What?
We missed
Missed
a
two
couple second
ordinances.
readings.
Which one?
105.
104 and 105, or just
Yes,
105?
104 and 105.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry. Back up, folks. Okay, 104. An ordinance amending the 2022 appropriation ordinance and ordinance 7220. I'm sure I read this.
Yeah, we did that one.
Okay, so it's
105.
105 and 107, right?
I'm
He
sure I
did
read
107.
I did 107.
I think it's just 105.
105.
We know what we're doing.
Well, so far, you haven't been right on any of them, so I'm
Start reading
Getting
105 and tell us if it sounds familiar.
Okay. Ordinance 105-22. An ordinance amending Athens City Code Title III, Administrative Provisions, Chapter 3.07, Administrative Departments, Boards and Commissions, Section 3.07.41, Athens Recreation Advisory Board definitions, introduced by Councilmember McCary. Okay, so we know 107's been done. I've read 108 already. Want me to read it again?
Nah.
Okay. You want to speak to it, Councilmember
This is the
Swank?
exciting stuff, the trash. Although I will defer to Mr. Stone on this as to what we have changed in the anti-scavenging section of this.
Sure. Thank you, Member Swank. As discussed at the last committee meeting, ultimately this legislation updates both our garbage and rubbish and our recycling legislation, which previously were two different sections, and combines them all into Chapter 5.02. The attached changes, or the changes are attached, and you can see the various changes with the strikeouts and then the additions of those two being melded together. Additionally, it provides, to Member Schwank's point about scavenging, 5.02.23 has some additional information about, basically granting the ability to the administration to be able to enforce our scavenging regulations a little bit more firmly. We do have some significant problems with scavenging, particularly during the Ohio University move-out era, or time every year, and that significant amounts of scavenging goes on. And while we do a lot of planned recycling and upcycling of material that is thrown out, there's also a significant amount of unplanned that is not very well controlled and results in a lot of trash, being thrown all over the street as people are peeling through rubbish looking for good items. And so we really want to be able to route people towards the proper, who are interested in some of those, upcycling or recycling of materials being disposed of when OU move out happens to the proper way versus just tearing through garbage and put a bunch of trash onto the city. That's all I have.
I did want to make a comment.
Please.
Under 5.0215 indemnity insurance, we didn't have anything in there during the council committee meetings. And in looking at it and thinking about what we require in other contracts, right now it says that the licensed hauler has to carry a policy of $300,000/$500,000. I'd like to clarify that, but most of our contracts talk about $1 million per occurrence and $3 million in the aggregate. And that's for bodily injury. For property damage, it was $50,000, and I think more appropriate, although council could discuss it, I suppose, would be $250,000 for property damage. If a truck would hit a building, I don't think that $50,000 would probably cover that. So anyway, that was a section that I actually suggested.
And I would agree with that. That's in line with the other locations that we have with contracts for folks to carry an indemnity. I do believe there might be a typo on that bodily injury, and that has $250 million, and that's probably
my
a little
goodness.
much. So you could probably just strike that last zero. I think it's just a typo.
We did talk about that when we had our conversations putting this together, and to make it more consistent with other independent contractors. Essentially, these people are, so we can certainly change that.
Member Crowe?
Thank you.
Right.
Just on that same note, I believe that what should be 3 million is 3,000. Isn't that a period?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Those, we can consider those just,
Just amendments? just-
Typos.
yeah,
Okay.
they are typos. The intent was 1 million, 3 million, and 250,000.
Yes.
Good eyes.
So to correct the insurance, will that require an amendment to this?
Oh, no, these are just, our intent was 1 million per occurrence, 3
Okay.
million in the aggregate, and 250,000. These were just clerical
Clerical,
errors.
okay.
So we can consider those clerical errors.
All right, fine. Any other discussion on this? Okay, make sure I don't skip anything here. Ordinance 109-22, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title I, General Provisions, Chapter 1.03, Code Fees Established, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
This one's pretty straightforward, as you can see, deals with Title V, and it simply sets the terms of licenses for solid waste and recycle haulers late fee at $100. And under terms of licenses, solid waste and recycle haulers license on an annual basis of $500.
Any discussion? Administration? Okay. Ordinance, yes? Oh, Mr. Delac?
Morris Avenue here in the city. Just sort of representing myself. $500, I was looking at the other ordinance, I think it is, that has the textual changes to the existing code. I thought it said $5,000 for the licensing fee. And I was wondering is there a typo again, or is it literally being reduced from 5,000 to 500?
Can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
It is being reduced from 5,000 to 500. It's you know, what we found basically is number one, $5,000 from a fee is you know, we don't believe it's defensible as a fee because you're supposed to charge fees based upon actual cost to the organization, and we think that was put in there a number of years to be exclusionary ultimately, and we think that these updates to the code will allow us, number one, to have all haulers in the city actually pay the fee that we expect them to pay, number one, and then number two, if they don't, you know, we've got some real strong case to go and take action against them. But we found before that $5,000, and then when it came to the contracted license hauler, that is to say the hauler that paid the fee to you know, basically be licensed in the city and to be able to compete for the city's contract for the franchise district and the residential solid waste collection, that was just passed on to the consumer directly through in addition to their bid that we would then go and pass on to the consumer in solid waste fees. This is intentional.
Okay, so I guess I was just making sure it was intentional. It did seem like a big change.
Yep, it is.
Down to 10% of what it was, but if that seems like the intent, and that's the right thing to do, no other questions. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, we're at 110-22, an ordinance granting a special use permit to Montel LC, owner of Athens Uptown Realty, 603 West Union Street, to allow a python sign in the city's right-of-way. Is that a snake?
Pylon.
Pylon,
A pylon, okay.
no snakes.
Sounded funnier my way, though.
Snakes on a road.
Any discussion?
this is something we talked about in committee, and it is just a right-of-way use being granted for a sign for the building located at 603 West Union Street. And we have accompanying documentation to indicate where that is, which is on the south side of Union Street, just before 682.
Okay. Any discussion? Director Stone?
During committee, there were two questions. Number one related to the height of the sign, and number two related to the green infill of the space beyond there. And I posed those two questions. I don't have the answer yet, but I will have it certainly well before the ordinance passes.
Thank you.
And just in
Continue.
response to the question about the height, I think there was a concern about visibility for pulling in and out. And it actually, if it's located where the diagrams indicate, where people pull up beyond that when they're pulling out of that parking lot. Because I specifically looked as I was driving by one day, and where the driver would be as they're preparing to turn onto West Union Street is going to be in front of the sign. So that, but it would still be good information to
I'll
have.
get to specifics. I know that the city engineer did indeed look at sightlines when they suggested that this be approved.
Thank you.
Member Swank?
Yeah, the reason I brought that up is on the far east side, when one exits from Euclid, the restaurant there basically has a structure in the right-of-way which impedes visibility for those exiting onto East State Street. When you move to Avon, you run into the same thing with the large yellow excavation equipment. And then probably the worst one is on Grand Park, when you pull out there, where the Hyundai dealer parks cars clear up to the sidewalk. And it's something that I've been trying to address with Director Riggs on that. And we just want to make sure we're not creating more of these sightline issues, because it is very, very dangerous on East State Street.
If I may.
Please.
So the equipment and the Hyundais are kind of repeat problems as they continue to push their way up into the thing. Tell me the name of the restaurant.
Soul?
Soul specifically?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I don't remember ever permitting, but Soul was built prior to me being the service safety director, a sign in the right of way for Soul. So it's possible that that is a function of either something that was grandfathered well in advance, or something that was there for the Maplewood.
Yeah, it wasn't for the Maplewood.
Oh, it wasn't for the Maplewood?
No,
Okay.
sir.
So we'll take a look at where that is relative to the right of way.
Because when you exit on those streets, the markings on the street, there's a white bar which a car should pull up to. But if a car only pulls to that white bar, they can't see, particularly those cars coming from the east, from Menards. So what that forces people to do is to pull all the way into the crosswalk. So anybody, walking, or for those who choose to ride their bike on the crosswalk, you're pulling right into bike traffic and pedestrian traffic. So it is a very dangerous situation.
It's possible, if it's really bad, that we'd have to buy the sign, buy more right of way there. I know that the right of way on East State Street was pretty narrow on the northern side. There was a lot of takes that happened when the street was widened, and it was widened all in that direction. And so I think at the time, the city, and this was prior to my working here, but in the 2000, 2001 era, took as little as they possibly could, given that they were taking so much property from various property owners on that side. So it's very possible that that right of way isn't, that the sign isn't actually in the right of way, and so we may need to look at either modification of the geometry of the markings, or in the worst case scenario, actually buying right of way to rectify the situation.
Thank you.
Okay. Ordinance 111-22, an ordinance authorizing the Athens City Shade Tree Commission to submit an application and enter into agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, ODNR, USDA Forest Service for participation in the Urban Canopy Restoration Program and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Ziff.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. This is fairly straightforward. The ordinance title there pretty well describes what this is for. I know there were a couple of questions when this came up in committee. One of them was if we had the required criteria for everything, and one of the concerns was if we had an ordinance in place in our code that would meet some of those criteria, and to answer that is yes, we do. With Title 33 and 37, that does meet the requirements for having a specific piece about trees in the city code. So we have that. And then there was also a question if this was like a continuation of something. I think this is the first year that Ohio has received funds, and it's expected to be funded in Ohio for the next 5 years. So this is it would be an every year reapply process. And I think there was another question because we weren't entirely sure how much we were going to ask for, and it is going to be $25,000, and that will be matched by the city with use of our tree bank. Go trees.
Absolutely.
Everybody likes trees.
Discussion?
Except the folks at the courthouse.
Member Grace.
I will just bring up the point that Member Spielness made as to the location of trees relative to our sidewalks, that the roots of trees definitely do a pretty serious number on the level status of sidewalks. And so I just wanted to reiterate that that is absolutely something to keep in mind, that it's very nice to have those trees between the sidewalks and the streets, but it does certainly cause some damage to the walkability of the sidewalks over years. And so
I had a very enjoyable meeting with the ad hoc sidewalk committee, which Mr. DeLocke over there is also on, and I expect we will be working with the Shade Tree Commission. We'll be working quite well with them as this project goes forward to make sure that we do address that, because it's not really worth it if you put in a nice new sidewalk and then it gets completely wrecked by roots, 3 years later. So yeah, that will definitely be addressed.
thank you.
Thank you.
Member Spielness.
Thank you. So, and thank you, Member Grace, for bringing that up. You beat me to it. But it's nice that we say that they need to take that into consideration, but do we need to have any verbiage in here that addresses that? I mean, I don't know. Law Director Lyson, what do you think? Is that being too detail-oriented or micromanaging, if you will?
It does sound like a little bit of micromanagement. I hate to say that, but I think the Shade Tree Commission will probably get the message from the discussion here tonight, what the concerns are.
Madam
I
President?
mean, of course, it's up to council. If council wants to amend this ordinance to put something in there, they certainly can also.
Okay.
I was just going to point that what this is it's an authorization to apply for a grant.
That's it.
Okay.
So, not the details of the grant.
Okay. Last one, ordinance 112-22, an ordinance amending the 2022 appropriation ordinance introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. Two appropriations in this ordinance, $14,500 to the general fund to cover a PERS contribution through the year end, and $25,000 to the APR income tax fund for storm sewer improvements in the newly leased space at the West State Street recreation fields. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Crowell. Any discussion on this appropriation? Administration, anything to say about it? Okay. Well, that takes care of all our readings. Next is announcements and other business. The first is a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment to the Municipal Arts Commission, and I will defer to Councilmember McCary.
Thank you. I would like to move that we approve Devin Sudsman's application to join this commission. Devin Sudman is an arts administrator with a music background and piano, is also experienced with managerial, directing, teaching, and performance experiences with theater, opera, and school programming, and would make a fine addition to this commission.
Member Swain?
Is this an additional member or a replacement member?
I believe it's a replacement member.
Okay.
Oh, there was a second?
Yes.
Yes, we have a second. Would the administration care to speak to this? Okay.
He arranged for guitar lessons for my kid for summer.
Oh,
Very nice. He's a good actor. Seen him play.
Yes, he's done fabulous work with OVST and Stewart's.
so I've heard,
and
yeah.
is a very talented and very committed to our community, so I think he would be a great addition.
Very good. Well, we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. It's passed. Okay. Motion to accept the July 2022 financial reports.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Motion to accept the July 2022 credit card transactions.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, passed. Now we have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered by the agenda. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak if you so choose. Anyone? You're kidding, okay. Well, in that case, I believe we call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.